free to, sort of raise your hand and sort of ask some questions and stuff like that. Mark
Carla
Porter.
was first.
Oh, Carla.
Ladies
please.
first.
Okay, fine. How many times have y'all wanted to chuck your instruments out and just quit altogether what you were doing?
Yeah. You want to start?
Quite a few times. I was actually talking about it about 15 minutes ago with someone, that there's certain times when you just look at it and go, I can't do it anymore. And sometimes these sort of festivals are like that, where you can get so much great information, you think, you get really enthused about it, but then you sort of listen to some people play and you go, wow, I can't, never even going to make it. So you do always have those sort of moments, but sometimes it's actually best to sort of go away from it for a little while. You like talking a day or two, and come back to it, and you'll want to come back to it as well to sort of get that hunger back to it. But definitely get to this point of go away.
Yeah. And also, in case you guys are wondering, Fletcher is a professional euphonium player in the U.S. Australian Navy Band stationed in Melbourne.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he's here, obviously, just here to learn and soak up information. And I wanted to say I invited him to be on this panel because he is a professional, but he's here in a concept of learning, and I think that that's just a tremendous thing. Me, as far, I was shaking down Joel Burley for copies of the master classes so I can watch them later, so I can learn. And I think the spirit of learning is just a very important part. And to answer your question, Carla, I think music is so frustrating. We have these high ideals, and I've never had like a really serious thought of I'm going to quit music completely, but I've had very frustrating moments, very emotional times that are sort of like, why am I doing this? Why don't people appreciate this art that I'm trying to share with them, and why bother? And the only thing that I can say is that every career, every experience you're going to have in life is going to have positives and negatives. And if you can focus on the positive, that's going to lead you to more happiness than being focused on the negative, for certain.
Sure. I would say I've never felt like I never want to play again. Like I'm going to throw my horn out the window. It's just been more depressing, pretty quick. Like if I got cut at an audition, and I was pretty positive about it. I was like, well, it's just not the right time. I still got to work on stuff. I just thought like, I got to improve myself, and so I was fine with those. One time at Falcone, I was playing the Faustbuck by Elizabeth Rahm by memory, the whole thing, and I was playing really well, and I messed up the end. Like I just stumbled memorize-wise, and so I got second, and I was like, man, I can't believe that happened. But I was really upset, but I was like, well, whatever, I still got some money. I'll go home, I'll work harder. So I just tried to keep pushing myself. The only time that I was really upset was in high school, because in Texas, all state's a really big deal. So some of you are from Texas. And so I never made all state. And so I was in high school, I was like, oh man, it means so much. And I remember sitting in band like, I don't want to play. I'm just going to hold my horn. But I couldn't help it. I was like, okay, I'm just going to play this. Okay, this part's fun too. Okay, I'm going to keep playing. And then it just kind of came back. So like Adam said, just keep going. It was too much fun to stop. That's why I kept doing it. That's why I did it in college. So just keep trying. Have fun.
You tell everything. What can I say? No, I am very, very crazy, and I never thought about stop. I mean, this career is very long, very hard, but it's the best in the world. I cannot imagine my life without making music, and that is because these frustrating moments, they give me more strength to go through many, many situations. And if you have the ability to learn about that and to take the energy and focus to go through, it is the best way. I mean, doesn't exist this idea to quit on my head. I mean, it's not possible. Mr. P.
For me, that goes back a long way. Maybe I should tell you a little bit about my beginning. It might make some sense, you know. My father was a good musician, and he was mostly self-taught, and I come from a very small town. And when I was growing up, he had a pretty good jazz band, and he played trombone, and they were very popular. And he always wanted me to play piano in the band. So at a very young age, you know, I started to play piano. I had piano lessons, frankly, for 18 years. I still play. All right? And I did eventually play with his band, which was quite good. Now, I wanted to play trombone, but my father is from that old generation. I said, son can't do that. So I went out one day in band. I wanted to play football, and I was quite good at it, except I got hurt. I didn't feel like the pain anymore. So the band director called me down because he knew I played piano, and I was doing pretty good at that particular time. He says, what would you like to play? And I thought a tuba was a baritone. Okay? So I said, I'll play the tuba. So he brought me out to sousaphone. And frankly, I was so embarrassed that I played it. And I'm not kidding you. 3 months later, I won a state contest. I never had a lesson, right? At that particular time. I always could, frankly, it wasn't too easy. My training on the tuba was I listened to Ray Brown and jazz players and things of that nature. I played a lot of tunes. I just never knew, you know. Band director was good, let's do this. I played. Come time to go to college, I went and I auditioned at Eastman in piano. And they said, well, you can come in, but we want you in music education. He said, I understand you play tuba. My father says, yeah. He took the sousaphone out of the trunk and they called Don Knob down. I played Asleep in the Deeper, so I don't remember what it was. I'll be a son of a gun, man. They gave me a full scholarship. I could go to Eastman on tuba. And I never had a lesson in my whole life. This is a true story, okay? First guy I heard when I went to Eastman was Roger Bobo, and he played as good then as they just now. And I figured, boy, I'm in a wrong business. Oh my God, what I'm going to do. But frankly, what that did for me was, you know, I'm going to play as good as that guy someday. So we practiced 6 or 7 hours a day at Eastman for 4 or 5 years. When I graduated from Eastman, I got a symphony job right away, and you know, and then I found out that, you know, it was not what I thought it was. Then I got drafted in the Army, and frankly speaking, I went to the Army band, thank God, because my orders were advanced infantry. We're talking in the 60s, you know. Or when you went, there was a war on, and a lot of your friends went to. I didn't want to go to Vietnam, even though I'm a hell of a good shot, you know. So I went to the Army band. I extended a year, and I met some of the finest people in the world. In that section, it was Chester Schmitz and me and Jimmy Self and my little brother, you know. And so we just had a great time. No one really talked about anything. We just sat down and played. Never thought about it, all right? My career went from there. I went to Amsterdam, played for a couple years. I learned a great deal over there, but still I was a very uptight tuba player. I could play, but very physical. So I come back to this country. I'll tell you the true story. I'm talking too long, but it's quite crazy.
You talk as much as you want.
But anyway, I remember I was very close. I took a lesson from Harvey Phillips. I heard Harvey when I was at Eastman, and I couldn't believe. I looked at him, and I'd heard that concert. I said, boy, that's what I want to do. I don't play quintet. That's me. Oh, boy, I want to do that. Finally, when I hit the Army band, I met him through a colleague of mine, was Bob Plant. He was at the house. Had a lesson with Harvey, invited me to New York. A lesson with Harvey was you spend 2 days with him, you know. Go out to dinner, you eat, or something like that, you play duets and such and such. It was a really great experience, and we took a real liking to each other. And that's frankly, then when I went to Europe, at that particular day in Vietnam, I said, well, this would be a good experience, and I had a great time over there. Really, you know, in Amsterdam was great. I played the ballet, played the new music. Frankly, that's Edward Dubois. You know who he is, that famous conductor? He was an horrible player. And, I mean, things go quite differently, you know. So my career went that way. I got married, come back home because our family wanted us home. And I'll tell you the story. There was only one audition open, and that was North Carolina Symphony. And I got it, all right? But it didn't pay much. And we're talking about 22 weeks. What are you going to do the rest of the year, right? So for some reason, I called Harvey. We were in close touch. He says, hey, Bill Ravelli wants to talk to you. That's nice. He said, yeah, there's going to be an opening in Michigan. At that time, people, there were no tuba teachers. The only guy that taught tuba later was Bill Bell when they started it. But you didn't go to school, you studied with somebody else at that particular time. So the quintet movement that Harvey and those guys started, what that did was made us responsible for having college teachers, because what they could do was recruit with a quintet. That's a lot easier. All the faculty wanted to do it. So there was a position open, and I called Ravelli. Good thing I'm Italian, believe me. And he says, what degree do you have? I said, has a bachelor's. He said, go call me when you get a master's. And I said to him, what do you want, a player or you want a degree? And he laughed at me. He says, boy, he says, oh yeah. He laughed at me, and once he said, Dan, he says, what are you doing next year? He says, frankly, we can't hire you because we have to have a master's degree at that particular time. I said, well, I'm going to go to the North Carolina Symphony. He says, how much money did you spend in your education? And I told him, he said, you didn't tell me you're going to go down there for $100 a week. What it paid was $100 a week. You had $1 for lunch and $1.25, and it was a traveling orchestra for supper, right? He says, and how much money did you spend in your education? And that's what you're going to do? He says, go get me a master's, go get a master's and call me. Well, I was in the military, so I went to Washington, D.C., where my brother was from. I played in the pro band, I did this, and I played piano. I still play a lot of cocktail piano. So I got a gig with, was me and Jimmy Self on bass and such. We played at club for a year. I made more money playing piano than I did a long time. Got a quick master's degree. Next thing opened up was Illinois, and I got it. And that was the start of it. At that time, the orchestras were all taken care of. For example, the Philadelphia Orchestra, you had to be a local of that union. They wouldn't listen to you. I remember Ron Bishop and I won audition. No, I wouldn't do it. You're going to hire a local guy. So our careers, what are you going to do? Well, I figured, well, hey, this college teaching seems like a good thing, and I started. In fact, I was one of the first teachers in that sense, and you learn a heck of a lot. And I just got to tell you how the breaks go. So maybe for your young people and all that, Harvey told me one time, he said, Dan, write down 10 of your goals, 10 of them. And my college teaching was like number 6 or 7 on my list. But frankly, it's the best thing I've ever done, because it offers me a lot more freedom. But you have to create what you're doing in the situation that you're doing, you know? Now, since I had experience a little bit on jazz, I did a lot of that. I still do somewhat in the closet. I don't play as well as I like to do, but, you know, and what do I do today? I just try to stay in shape so I can still play good. Hopefully I can keep playing for a couple more years, because I really enjoy sitting there trying, and I really wanted to play a lot. So, you know, St. Louis Symphony called me a couple of times, and I played with them on a regular basis, right? So I knew the bass trombone player, had a St. Louis Brass Quintet. When that thing opened, we talked about, hey, why don't we just do this? I said, this is great. So I started playing with the St. Louis Brass Quintet, which paid money, and I went out and did concerts with professionals, and it was great, because not only did I do these master classes and recruit, I got paid for it. The only trouble was the university attitude was, you got to stay here all the time and just teach, you know? So we had to prove them, okay, I'll make up my lessons and the like. But that carved out a completely other career for me, which kept me going, because, you know, these university jobs, you can get real comfortable. We all know that. And you should go. So you try to do something different. Quintet was good. Then one idea we heard, we did the symposium. I remember I did the first one here 40 years ago at Indiana. We did several of them. We started TUBA. And the reason why we did that was we wanted to have, listen, there were no computers, remember different phones. I spent a fortune on phone calls and when we were organizing all this stuff, because we wanted to share all this information. You know, I wanted to talk to these guys here. How could you do that other than the phone? So that's one of the reasons Winston Morris and me and Harvey and all that, we got involved, because we wanted to give our students an opportunity to see a lot of people. Regardless, what I'm seeing is the crowd that I was around, everybody wanted to do something a little different. You got an idea? Hell, do it. So we started, I'm going to tell you how the Summit Brass started. We're in a quintet in the car, and Dave Hickman is my colleague, and he's a wonderful trumpet player. And Dave says, geez, I just heard that group. We had a symposium in the Scandinavian brass play. We ought to do something like this over here. I said, that's a good idea. He said, I got some friends, let's raise some money. He says, and see what we can do in Colorado. So we all spent out. He says, who do you want in your group? And of course, we all have good friends. And I said, gee, trombones, well, I get a good friend of mine is Ralph Sauer. Gail Williams is a good friend, such and such, and we're just naming big names, okay? We got that group together, and we had a record contract before we played one note, all right? And it's that kind of thinking around the box. Take a shot and see what happens, you know? Now, here's another thing you have to do, is what I really respect this young man here, what he's doing in this group. You got to raise money. Somebody's got to pay for it. All right? And so you have to have sponsors. Well, look at musicians. A lot of you guys are going out there to become doctors, to become very successful. So we just put some lists together of some successful people in the business that we knew had money, and would they join our board? And that's been going on for years. So that has right now become the Mendez Institute, because the Mendez brothers always wanted to have Raphael's name out there, and they are very wealthy doctors, and they support their dad's image. Therefore, that's why we do the Mendez Institute, and it pays for everything, and people get scholarships. I'm talking too long, but what I want to say is that I've been a very lucky person, in the sense that we've been into a lot of things, and what I see here now today is grown 15 times. So it's really, really quite nice. The Army Band, when I was in there, was pretty good, but what a wonderful job it is now. If I were around today, I'd probably make a career out of that, you know, if I had to go back in. Things of that nature has changed, because it didn't used to be that way.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, yeah, you sit there and you know, play, they wouldn't let you play a quintet or anything.
Yeah.
But things have changed. And I think it's because of us. Now you guys go out there and do the same thing. Been a good career. I've had a great time. I'm 70, still playing. It's great.
I had an amusing story just to share about, you know, you said you picked the wrong instrument. Well, I started out on trumpet, and in 7th grade, the band director needed somebody to play the baritone horn for one concert, he said. And nobody opted up, and he cornered me. About a week later, he cornered me in the band room. I was getting my trumpet to go home and practice, and he cornered me, and he always called me Fry. He never called me Adam, always Fry. He said, Fry, I need somebody to play that baritone horn for just one concert. So anyway, the band director cornering you, and so I did, and just like you said, you won that solo competition. I got first in the district honor band like 3 weeks later, and thought I was all big and powerful. And then when I showed up at district honor band, I was in 7th grade, and there were 3 9th graders in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th chair, and I was like, I am magnificent. I mean, 7th grade, a couple weeks on here, first chair, and then I find out when I ask these guys, the 2nd chair guy goes, something came up and he said, yeah, my band director told me on Tuesday I have to come play in this band. I was like, hold on. So the other 3 had been drafted. And evidently there was a significant shortage of people that actually took the audition in the first place. So, but hey, I still got it. So, other questions?
This is for the soloist mainly, about how you go about booking work in other countries.
Oh, well,
Do you use like management, like company?
yeah,
management?
ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot, because I can tell you a story. Last month, I played with my brass quintet last year in a huge festival in the south from Argentina. Really in the south, like cold and snow and stuff. And after the festival, I sent to him an email 1 month ago, like, listen, I would really like to make a recital for tuba and piano during the festival. And the answer from him was, yeah, don't get mad, but nobody wants to listen to tuba. Yeah? I have the email, I can show you. And that is because if you give your work to someone else, like a manager, who don't have idea about what a tuba is and how our work works, it is really difficult to get through, because the orchestras, I mean, I dream every morning, like I wake up and I have 120 concert soloists with the best orchestras in the world turning around, but it's like a dream, because the orchestras, if they make one tuba concert a year, is fantastic, a lot. And it's because it's very difficult to sell something that many people don't know, you know, and that is what I think, or what I try to do, is to open my instrument to the society, not only here or to the ITEC or to the, you know, like our work, opening really to play for them, that they know that you, for sure, you know the expression, oh, is that a tuba? After a concert, you know, it's like all the time people, when they see the instrument, because they have a preconceptions like umpa umpa all the time, and when they listen what the tuba can do or the euphonium can do is a completely 180 switch, and that is because we need to get them this knowledge, you know, what we have from our side. And about the careers, yeah, I do a lot myself. I try to work with some manager, but it doesn't work a lot. And for traveling around is like you need to prepare some file like from you, send to many people, like conductors or orchestras and stuff, and it's very difficult that they accept that. It is very difficult, but I do on my own. I mean, I try to do as much I can, but it's very difficult. I know. If you're sure.
I could tell you one thing too, that, okay, we're trying to become classical instrument soloists, right? And we should competition, violinists, cellists, come on. And as far as musicians go, I'll be honest with you, and I'm not saying it to discredit anybody, but I don't know anybody who's in the league of Yo-Yo Ma and that such on the tuba yet. I'm still waiting for him. Boy, we're getting close. But, you know, I'm certainly not at that level. But that's what it's going to take, but somebody has to appreciate. But the interesting thing is, if you are going to do a piece, a classical piece, do a little research in it. If it's a Baroque piece, play like a Baroque piece. And that's what we're missing, our history and the like, you know? And like you said, you want to be a really good soloist, you know, I'm not worried about it. I've been saying, oh, I never knew a tuba could do that, you know? And we've done tuba Christmases to bring attention. I really don't particularly care, but what we want to do, all of us, we want to get an audience out there besides tuba player. Let me ask you this. How many of you guys like rock and roll? Can you play it? You tell me out there, how many of you can tell me what a blues is? Okay, you want to hear that all your life. You mean tell me you can't tell me that? You know, how many changes there are? This is the kind of thing in some popular music, there's other sides that can do just as good. Hey, you're in the South. Country music, right? I used to hate it, but there's some really good ones out there, you know? But, you know, I mean, but there are some guys that say, you want to take a break, go to a club and do that. We used to do Dixieland gigs with trumpet, trombone, and tuba, you know? And I did it with a drummer and all that. Jimmy Self and I, we played for 6 years and playing Dixieland. I'll tell you what, you learn your scales fast. So think a little bit out of the box. Now, I'll give you a real good example. Chuck Donenbach with the Canadian Brass. Those guys couldn't get a gig to save their tush, and they were out there in Canada. And what they did is they played freebie concerts to children's schools. You know, they used to have young audiences about 40 years ago. They still do it now, whereas you go into the schools and you sign a green sheet and the union pays you. All right, they did a lot of freebies. And then Chuck, he's a genius, got an idea. He says, you know what, I'm going to sell this children's concerts to adults. All right? So they put a little comedy in with it, and they do a little bop, and it became an entertainment group. Now, when you are in entertainment and you're booking, that's a different class than you do as a soloist. You do a soloist, you're going to play for 140, 150 people. String quartet, unless you're the Juilliard Quartet or something, you get a bigger audience. But you're not going to do that. But as an entertainment group, you get a great big hall. You get 15,000 people sometimes when you're booking. Okay? So they played popular music, and they played tunes, and they taught the audience. You know, if they're going to do some classical, they did, you know, some of the literature wasn't great music, but it was well done. You know what I'm talking about? So now, if you're in a brass quintet, you want to make a little bit of a living and book yourself, you got to do something the audience wants to hear. You come in there and do the Etler, they're going to walk out the door. We'd like to do that in the colleges and such, but you might come in and play everybody's singing. Well, I never knew a brass quintet to do that. Then the tuba player comes out and takes a solo, and you might do big bum, whatever, okay? And that's how you start to sell yourself, right? And just like you were saying, but try to be a soloist as a classical musician, good luck. All you're gonna do is get booked at colleges, most likely. I mean, I've got a lot of good booking, but I don't have an agent. They usually call you. Our quintet does, though. And you know what you do? You send, you got to go to meetings, you send, you have to have a really good brochure, you have to have a brochure, you have to have recordings, and you have to have, you know, all that things take some time. But if you work at it, look at the Canadian brass. Chuck is the richest tuba player in the world. And I'll tell you what, my little brother, I'm very proud of the fact that they did that. Personally speaking, I wouldn't want to play 180 concerts a year playing that every night. That's a different story. You've got to be a particular type person to go on a road like that. You'll lose a family half the time too, you know. Okay, that's enough said on that. Any other questions? Unless you have something to say? As a soloist, look at these guys, it's different in England.
The question was to use an agent or to do it
Just how
yourself.
do you go about booking in other countries?
But I think the question's interesting itself because as the soloist, the onus isn't really on you to go and book your jobs. If you should be trying to get to a certain level whereby as long as they know the product, i.e. you, the player, that they'll want to book you. And then when that happens, then you have decisions to make with regard to agents or doing it yourself. I do a half really. If I'm dealing with people I know, like Adam, or maybe in the brass band scene, which is quite a niche market in the UK really. Although the brass bands are popping up all over the place now, then I'll usually take care of that myself. If it's with an orchestra, then I do have an agent that does that because it's a different world, to be quite honest. The fees that you can command with an orchestra, I wouldn't even dream of asking for them sometimes. But the agent is great for that because they're doing the job. But Dan's absolutely right. I think this day and age, I had a dream to be a classical soloist, and I'm getting a few jobs here and there with orchestras. But you can't compete against the violinists. You can't compete against the pianists, the cellists. And it's not because you can't become as good a musician. You all have it in you to become a Yo-Yo Ma or whoever else, a Nigel Kennedy. But we haven't got the repertoire. If you look at the orchestras, every season they program the same things. The Rachmaninoff piano concerto, the Elgar cello concerto. They're actually looking at the repertoire a lot of the time more than the artist. So you do have to be more creative with your career path and try and find something that you can give them that they can't get elsewhere. And that's the challenge.
You could use the tuba, really, and I hate to say this, as a novelty. People take a look at that, you come out there and you do something as you know, play a little blues or multiphonics or something like that. Wow, they went nuts, and you know, you'd be surprised. And that leads to other things. Hey, listen to that. Now, I'll tell you, like Sergio and those guys are making a career out of the internet. I mean, you take a look on Facebook, they're on there all the time. Actually speaking, they're playing to about 7 or 8 people sometimes, and sometimes for a larger crowd. There's another guy named Alessandro. You know Alessandro? He's got a group called La Banda. And it's a sort of a rock group, and he's playing Helicon on it. And they play to crowds of 15 to 25,000 people a night. They're one of the biggest draws in Europe right now, and particularly in Germany. So, I mean, a little sick of it, he says, but frankly speaking, they make more money one night than he makes in half a year. Now, it's not to do with the money situation. What that money can do is hell, to go buy an orchestra you want to play bad enough. You know, think about creative things of that nature, because that's how it's really done. These great soloists and the like, boy, did they pay their dues, you know?
And in the orchestra scene, how David say is the managers many times they have some kind of arrangement with different artists and different orchestras, and they like if you try to get like in a high standard orchestra from my own, I will be rejected because I don't have this standard connection what the manager have. You know, that happens a lot too.
But I think it's also similar to what David was talking about as far as budgets. A manager is going to want anywhere from a 15 to 35% cut of the fee. If let's say that let's say your fee is $1,000, which seems like a lot of money, but think about what a manager would get between $150 to $300 of that. That's not what that's not going to be economical for them. I think most of these managers are looking for people and to manage artists and manage contracts for somebody who's getting paid $5,000 to $50,000 and stuff like that. And then it's sort of worth their while. So I think there's also the economics that are at play, there's a repertoire at play, and then also the connections that are at play.
If you're wanting to go build up a career as a euphonium soloist and get some work in other countries, then you just need to get yourself known. And we're in a modern age now, and Dan mentioned it, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. If you've got the product, if you can deliver the goods, then put it out there and let everybody know about it, because then you've got a much better chance of them requesting you. But certainly they need to know about you. You can become the best player in your front room, but if nobody knows about you, you're not going to get any gigs.
Yeah, one of the things in our business is, we like to work with people that it's going to be, your friend and the like. If I sit in an orchestra and this guy's next to me is an absolute rear end, and I've seen that where people don't talk to each other. I'm not going to mention names for 40 years. You sit right next to him. How would you like to have a job like that?
No, that is absolutely impossible.
It's impossible, but I'm sure many of us sat in that situation where and there's another time where somebody's carrying you or you're carrying them. You know what I mean? So I go sort of thing, is whatever day it is, hey, we're only human. But be a nice person. The first thing I get a lot of calls to place people anymore. Hey, give me a recommendation. What do you think about such and such? And to be honest with you, I don't like to be in that position. But the first thing they're going to ask you, dependability. What kind of person is the person? Does he dress neat? I'll give you another example where you guys miss out on. You're going to go take an audition. You go in there and you look like $1 million. And there's another guy who looks like, and you play equal. Who do you think they're going to hire? All right? Think about that. You're going to take an interview. You want to give a good impression. It's a little bit of an act. When you go in for an interview starts when you get off the plane. How you eat. Everything like that, of course, until the time that you feel extremely comfortable, but all those things are important. And it's going to be important in anything you do on networking, too. Put some class in there. Make sure it's good. Have a little humor when it is. Do something novelty or find something that no one else does. For us, we play our own literature. I usually do everything that I do anymore. I don't usually have to go out and play other things. But it makes you, like Adam and David, they got pieces and they've got unique pieces for everybody. It gives you a personality, right? So there's a lot of things like that. Now, the next thing is grants. You're talking about how do you book something? Look at Oystein. Oystein is doing because he's got government support and the like. If he didn't have that, I bet $1 he couldn't do what he's doing right now, And he's one of the best we have. But there are grants. There are grants out there right now that you can write. Our quintet, our agent does that. They get into Mid-America grants, and they pay half the fee for the concerts that you're booking. This is how agents do it today, particularly for colleges. So there's a lot of things that you can learn, the grants, the publicity. How do you write a really good resume? Okay? There's a lot of books on that. Everything is available on such and such. Do it class. You young guys are going to write for a graduate degree. Send a letter, check it out very carefully and see how it reads. Somebody comes out and they call me Dan, which by the way I could care less, or Mr. P. But I'm saying, hey, wait a minute, you haven't earned that right to call me up. There's some people I wouldn't do. That tells a story right there, So give a good impression. Think about things before you do it. The best advice I can give all of you as we're talking here. Right?
Yeah.
Military board is that you better look good. That's one thing I learned in the military. I keep my pants and my shoes shining, right?
Yes.
Look at the haircut.
That's right.
Okay, I know.
So,
what are the funniest performance experiences you guys have had?
I can't tell you that.
It's rated R.
You'll tell that at a special over 18.
Yeah.
Probably a lot. You have to be there. You have to see while we're laughing. You have to be there in the moment. I'll tell one. Do you guys know who Mitsuru Saito is? Mitsuru Saito. He's an incredible euphonium player from Japan, and he went to the University of Michigan, and then he came to North Texas. While he was at North Texas, he was the best euphonium player. He was the best trombone player, and he would accompany everyone on piano. So all the crazy euphonium, Creston, Castrade, everything, he'd play on piano. And our very last concert, his last concert at UNT, we played a piece called Machu Picchu as an awesome euphonium part. And there's like these huge melodies, kind of like Zorro, like movies, like, you know, really cool parts. And in the middle of the piece, we were resting, and Mitsuru put his horn down, and he did this whole like Japanese samurai thing, and he was and I was like, what are you doing? Like, we're on stage, and I was just crying, laughing, and I was like, I can't believe he's doing this. And then like when we started playing, he was acting like a little Japanese kid, and he was moving all around like this. And I was like, he was just trying to make me laugh, and then we were like trying to compete who could play louder on some stuff. Like we laughed so hard, and we saw Dr. Bowman afterwards, and he said, "Oh, you're having a lot of fun up there, weren't you?" Yeah, so like, man, that was a lot of fun. You just had to be there, like, to hear that guy play with him. It was really incredible.
There's a new book out called Mr. Tuba. It's the life of Harvey, and it's really good. I'll tell you one story, because I was there for most of the things too. We're playing at the Jazz Showcase, and this is years ago. It was me, Rich Madison, Winston Morris, a bunch of us. We had a group called Tuba Jazz. If you haven't heard it, there's recordings out there. We were pretty popular. I played all over the world. Louis Belson was our drummer. He's not bad. So we're sitting there and having a break. And a guy comes up to Harvey, and he says, "Hey, is this outfit any good?" And he looks at me and says, "Frankly, I think you look better in a blue suit." You know, and what, you know what I mean? It's just that come back so fast, and of course we lost him right there. None of us could play that night. Rich Madison was in tears. "Yeah, you look better in a blue suit. How about that for a comeback?" You had to be there, you know. There's a couple other stories I won't get into. Yeah.
A funny one that's actually related to IEI. In the second year, we were playing down in the Burlington Road building, and we were in the middle of the same, different arrangement of the Ave Maria that we played on Wednesday night. And the light control was on the wall, and there were 2 or 3 people that were standing backstage, and the music was so beautiful that Elliot Woodbury just leaned against the wall. And all of a sudden, the lights start coming down, and I hear all this sort of rustling. You know, they're trying to find the light control because we're playing the piece in the middle of it. And anyway, so that they ended up finding some type of control. They kept playing. I actually started walking back because I knew exactly what had happened. So I was like, so I walked back to try and turn on the lights, and by the time I got back there, they had it back on. But they kept playing and stuff like that. It was funny.
Had to be there.
Fletcher, you have a good one from Australia?
I can think of one. I played with the marching band, which was made up from members all over the world for the opening of the Sydney 2000 Olympics. And we had a band of 2,000 people. This marching band, which was 100 yards wide. So we literally had conductors on scissor-lifts, and you had to sort of follow them and not listen to the sound, which was 100 yards away. And we had done rehearsals for 6 months, and all the sousaphones had these fiberglass sousaphones which they used. Got to the first dress rehearsal, there's 120,000 people in the stadium, and Yamaha provided 100 brand new shiny sousaphones. And to protect the surface, they'd put all these boards over the surface and in this like sandy looking sort of carpet, but the boards weren't quite even. So we're doing this American marching band style, which was very new for us, sort of 160 beats a minute, they're little short paces. 3 sousaphones went up, hit their foot on one of those boards, and all went down. Bent the belt on all 3 of these instruments that were out of the packet for about 10 minutes. So that was a little embarrassing for those guys.
Other questions? Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Who did you guys look up to get you by?
Everyone, I'm sure.
That's good.
I'll say real quick, two people. One, Dr. Bowman, because he's just the best teacher. He was really intense, but the nicest, good person, you know. So he really inspired me in a lot of things I do. Second one was my mom, because she was always really hard on me, like work hard, work hard, work hard. Education comes first. And so I owe a lot to both of them.
For me, my father was my biggest inspiration and influence. I was really lucky as a kid because I'd get to hear him practice in the house, and that's the reason why I started playing. And he was, I've been lucky enough to hear some great euphonium players, but he was the best for me. And listening to that as a day in, day out, you can't help but be inspired. And so I'd say my father.
I remember as a kid, musically I used to always listen to Stephen Mead was the one for me, listen to CDs and that sort of thing. And more recently, Adam. I met Adam over in Australia about 4 years ago now. And just sort of the way that he goes out and sort of knows what he wants and goes and gets it. Sort of really admire that. And this festival is a great example of that. 10 years in, we have 70 participants and it's just growing and growing. So,
for me, it would be my first teacher, Dave Randolph, who was at the University of Georgia. He was kind enough to give me free lessons during my undergrad, during my 12th grade year, and he taught me very much about being very prepared for every lesson. He never remembered this lesson, but one time when I was in high school, I didn't get enough time to practice. I showed up for my 1 hour lesson, and because I wasn't prepared, we only worked for about 35 minutes. And he said, well, I guess that's it, so we'll see you next week. And he just was being very nice and polite, you know, just sort of like, yeah, we're done, no worries. But I took it as this very cruel thing of like, you're obviously not prepared, you're a total slacker, and you should get out and you're wasting my time. Don't ever do this again. That's what I read between the lines. And anyway.
Read a lot.
Yeah, definitely. But from that point forward, I learned from that point to never be unprepared for a lesson or a concert or anything like that. So it was one of the greatest lessons that I had with him in that particular situation. And then also another person that I look up to greatly is my father, a very stern fellow with lots of rules, and things that I thought were too difficult and too rigorous when I was a kid, I see why they're very important and help make you a very persistent, hardworking person. So those would be the two main people for me.
Oh, for me, I mean, musically is, I start in a brass choir for an evangelist Lutheranist church in Argentina, and the guy who picked up us from the school, he was like the guide for many years to me. He's living in Germany now, and he was really a huge inspiration. He never thought, or he never was waiting that we, when I start with him, that we was, or he never want to, that we got professionals, but he was a huge inspiration. And then musically, out from him, I mean, I am a person who tried to learn the whole day, and I can tell you a list of many people. I mean, each of the people who sit here, I have learned a lot already this week, and it's, for me it is very important to keep open and to learn, because we are not, many of us musicians or who travel or play some solos and stuff, many forget about that. Actually, when you don't have the instrument anymore in your hand, or when you cannot play anymore, what actually stay for you is there are the persons, the people, you know, and many forget that. They think there are superstars and stuff. And actually, for me, what is very important is to have the time to share with people and to learn from them. That is because I have a lot of people to say.
We're waiting on you, Mr. Parentoni.
Well, I mean, I think what you say here, I've met a lot of people this week, and I've heard some things that really, it's going to make me be more inspired and do something different. I mean, there's so many people that you've been grateful for, you know. And I kind of tell you something, be a little selfish and like yourself, too. You know, there's a lot to be said about that. But some of the, I could name a ton of names that's been an influence on me, starting with my father, my brothers, such and such. Family is extremely important, and it still is, you know. And my wife, she's an inspiration to me. She makes me practice. She loves to. She listens to me. She keeps me going. Again, there's 2 or 3 projects that I have to do because she would like to do it. So it makes me cook a little bit. Right? I respect that. Gee, where's Arnold Jacobs, Harvey Phillips, my first teacher, Don Nubb. I mean, I could list and that. And then we become sort of, in my teaching, is a combination. I think a lot of it is mostly Jake, energy of Harvey. I try to be all those kind of things that you learn. And so there's somebody, what do I listen to? I don't listen to tuba players, I'll be honest with you. I listen to Bill Evans. I love Bill Evans on piano. Sinatra is my favorite. I love the way he phrases. It just depends on what I'm listening to, you know? Now, do my homework. If I got to do a Handel concerto, go out and I listen to that stuff. So that's been a big influence to me. Hey, the internet. Great influence. I can go back and listen to Tommy Dorsey. I can go back and look in the Hindenburg conducting the symphony. Wow, you guys are lucky. You know, some of us, I mean, I can tell you, playing for some of those great people in part of my career, and see Rubinstein walking up down and when we were playing in Amsterdam, it was a fantastic experience. He's 80-some years old, that kid could play. Menachem Pressler, he's 91 years old. He played last week with our orchestra. I had tears in my eyes. It was unbelievable. 91 years old. So, well, you can learn every day. You know, I learn from my students. Sometimes a kid comes in there and plays something. Oh, wow, I'm going to take that one home and stick it in my pocket. So just remember, every time, there's so many great people. The nicest people I ever met are tuba and euphonium players. I mean, of all the brass instruments, and they will tell you the same thing. The horn and the trombones, they all want to be like us. Just keep that one going.
Strings more.
What's it like to record a CD?
What kind of CD?
Like for like Adam, Mr. Fry, and Child's like a solar CD. Like you got out in the exhibits, you guys have like 5 or 6 CDs. What's it like to do one of those?
It's great. It's really it's good fun. You've got to do a lot of preparation. You've got your repertoire first of all. What's going to be on this CD that you're going to make? Who's going to accompany it? Is it going to be a piano? Is it going to be a band, an orchestra, whatever? And then once you've got all that, you're looking at the sessions. So I don't know, it varies for different people, but you might be given 3 sessions to record 60, 70 minutes of music, or you could be given more. So then you've got to plan out, well, how long is it realistically going to take me to record this solo, this solo? How is my lip going to feel about 6 o'clock in the evening on the first session? Am I going to be able to play that at that point? And if you come up with negative answers, you need to do a lot of work in advance. And so I think the actual recording on the day for me is always really good fun because I've put in a lot of hard work before it. If you don't put in the preparation, as if like you would for a concert performance, if you don't put in the preparation for a recording, you can find yourself in a room where there's people who are paid to record you, engineers, producers, there's musicians who are behind you, who are just sitting there waiting for you to get it right. And if you find yourself in that scenario, then it's not such good fun. But as long as you're prepared and you're realistic with yourself about what you can record in a certain period of time, then there's no reason why it can't be a really fulfilling experience.
For me, I think it's an exciting thing, but it's also a scary thing because you're basically creating something that will continue forever. and you can't necessarily go back and change it, and people will associate the way you play a piece exactly like it's on the recording. And even if, I'm sure you probably had this situation, you send a, conductor asks for a recording, and maybe you've done it 5-10 years ago, but you do the tempos and the interpretation very differently now, but they listen to that recording and they only want to do it just like that recording, and you're like, I thought I'd moved on, but you haven't. The preparation, like David was talking about, is very, very key. I think what's nice about it is that there's a very finite goal as you're getting ready. You can see it, that you're going to record in 2 weeks, and sort of moving towards that. It's sort of this nice, almost, it's like climbing a mountain, that you can see the summit and you're going to get there. But it's a bit of a long trek, but once you get to the top, it's a great experience.
I've only recorded a CD, obviously, but I've recorded a couple of times with the Australian Navy Band. And as David was saying, then it's very much preparation. Time is money. You can't sort of spend time in the studio learning the parts. And again, as Adam said, you've got a whole band. You've got, for me, it was 55 musicians sitting there with a wind band waiting for you to get your part right. So preparation is absolutely everything. And I recorded Harlequin about 12 months ago, and I just did so much work on that faster movement of that. I didn't want to be the weak link in that. But yeah, when you actually get in there and you get in your little sort of corner booth and everything, it's so much fun on the day to put it all together.
There are different types of recording too. All right, going for a jazz session, a lot of times you haven't rehearsed it all. Okay, and you got to sit down there, the things is, and then they start, and here's your part. You take a look at it. I remember doing Oleo with the Tuba jazz. I got that part, it was wet, and I said, oh my God, how the hell am I going to play that? And Buddy Baker's just singing. You're on. 15 minutes later, that's it, and the needle drops. That's completely different than like a solo when I have a lot of time and they splice. Back when we started playing like that, you know how you had to cut the splice? They took a razor blade and they sort of pulled it on a tape. So a lot of those old recordings you just did live, and you got to take that in consideration now, because today a lot of things are too creative. I've heard some things that are fantastic. When I heard a guy play live, couldn't come close to it. So there's other things to be considered too if you want to be a performer. All right, you're going to make a recording now. When you go out to play that piece with the band, it's got to sound as good as that recording. Well, I mean, you're only human. Things are going to happen. But you see that keeps you going, doesn't it, David? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, realistically, if you're going to record a solo, you've got to be able to play it back to back 3 times. Essentially, you'll record it first of all, and someone from the booth will say, "Yeah, that was good. Let's do it again." Okay, and that's the safety run, just for and then you might go back and there was a mistake here in the band, or there was a mistake from the solos, and it's tough stamina wise, particularly the solo stuff is tough. But the kind of recordings you were talking about, I imagine they're even more fun.
Well, they are. You never know what you're going to get, and be surprised sometimes you fake the hell of it and you sound pretty good, And if you do work, that's another one. I mean, a lot of times you go in there if you're going to do a recording for a jingle or whatever. Okay, here's the music. Right when you get there, you take a look. Okay, you got 5 minutes. You're on. So you better learn how to read, and you better know the style. If it's a rock and roll type of thing with a groove, is a certain groove. And these guys are good. You should go in for some of these rock recordings. Some of them are really fantastic musicians when it hits, because time is money. And if you're with an orchestra, you got to repeat that again. That's thousands of dollars, boy, and they will never call you again. So there's a lot of things. There's different types of situations. There's different recordings. I like to do a solo thing. It's quite fun because I can spend a lot of time at it in the session. I used to go out and play it on the road for about a year till I know the piece well enough so I can get the musical aspect. That helps good. So, does that help you with it?
Yeah.
All right.
And one funny thing is when I was in grad school, I actually recorded Tuba on a track of a gospel CD.
Bad boy.
Yes. But it was so funny because they called. They said, "Yeah, we've got this track and we were using the string bass, but we want a tuba on it." And I asked him, "Oh, okay, well, and you'll appreciate this, Mr. Parentoni," because I was like, "Oh, well, can you send me the sheet music?" And he was like, can't you just show up and play along? And I was like, okay. Do you have a lead sheet or changes? He's like, no. Can't you just play it? I was like, okay. So we showed up, and I had to figure out what the chord changes were. The guy didn't even know what key the track was in. Anything like that. So that just tells you what it is. And I was like, oh, G major. Wrote out all the chords and stuff like that, then made up a little bass line with it and everything like that. And then when I left, they paid me my $150, and he was like, well, we'll just sort of see, we're going to play it for Johnny and see whether he likes it with the string bass or with the tuba and stuff like that. And then like maybe 2 years later, I got this CD that came forwarded through the mail from the UGA School of Music, and I was like, what is this strange? See, I'd forgotten completely about it. Then I looked on the back, and there's my name, Tuba, on it. I was like, yeah. So, but the experience of not having any music, not going to chord changes.
I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So,
kind of for all of you, further on in your career, you get married, you have children, you're juggling, a job at 2 colleges, an orchestra to play, various things like that. Do you have any advice, for all of us of how to balance your life, how to balance your time?
So, don't run a summer festival.
we need a psychologist here.
How to balance your life?
Yeah.
How to balance tuba and then the rest of your life.
So how to balance?
Who starts?
I failed miserably.
So you guys did. Different generation, huh? Look, I lost a couple times, all right? And the reason being is I was in a position where I had to be on the road a lot. My job was I did a lot of traveling. And it's very difficult to keep a very good family life if you're traveling too much. Okay? I don't know how some of these groups stay with it, and most of them don't, I could name a lot of groups who went on the road 150 times a year. But a particular time when we did a lot of concerts, I feel really kind of badly because I had no choice, it just depends on what happened. And you learn from your mistakes. The only thing I would tell you is always try to be positive, learn from your mistakes, and I think it's helped me a great deal as an adult. And frankly, I know that God said that if you screw up in this life, you're going to come back and do it all over again. So I'm really trying not to do that, I'm making it all up, So I can't tell you other than that. You just asked a question, so you should know the answer.
You need to find your own balance.
And I'll tell you what, find a partner.
Exactly. Yeah.
That relates and understands you. The mistakes that we make sometimes, we really have the wrong partner. There was a very good romance, but you got to make a really 100% commitment. And so when you are ready to do that, I think you can grow as a result. All right?
Yeah, and you'll find your priorities will change as things in life change. My amusing story about knowing that Janet was the right person was she was my first girlfriend that I had that I wanted to spend more time with her than practice my euphonium. So that was good. And then, finding about work and whether you have baby, different situation, you have to be happy. And if all you do is work, like in The Shining, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I think that you'll find that there's a very significant investment of work that you have to do during your schooling to get the fundamentals and the level that you need to achieve, and then you can reap the rewards from that. When I was in college, they sort of harassed me. They were like, oh, you never go out and go to any big parties or anything like that. And I'd go every now and then, but not nearly as much as what the other people were doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. But then it's sort of not like funny haha, but a situation of that some of these same people are sort of in careers where they're struggling with things and not as stable. And I feel quite stable and know that my investment of time and focus then has created that stability that I get to be able to enjoy now.
I would say like how do you organize your life? It's almost like not related to music. It's whatever you go is life, and it's just how so far is working for me. Whatever you're going to figure out, I just try to work hard, try to be a good person. It's almost like you're asking me, like, how do you make a marriage work? It's like, well, that's a whole nother story, you know? Yeah, it's like there's lots of books on that. But
They're all right.
yeah.
If they're suggested by your wife.
Yeah.
Janet, I hope you're not watching this.
But I can't say is, you know, those things do translate directly to your musical career or anything you do. If you work really hard and you try to be a good person, you be nice, you treat people with respect, you be kind, you'd be surprised how many times that messes people up in their career. Like they're stupid. They just make stupid mistakes, or they're mean to people. You know, it happens all the time. Like 10 years later, like, oh, you know this guy? Oh yeah. Like, man, I know some stories about that guy. Or, you know, things like that happen. Like, we always know somebody. Like, you'll find as you get older, you're always going to know someone that went to college with somebody else, especially in the music world. You're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. He went to this guy. You know this guy? Yeah. Like, everybody, you're always going to find someone you know. Like, oh yeah, he went to North Texas. He went to UGA.
And they only remember your worst situation, just so you know. Nobody ever remembers a good situation. Oh, I remember when he...
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, have fun, but you know, it's almost not related to music.
You know what, yeah, you're putting it this way. What you're doing when you walk into the doors, you're building a reputation. We make our money on our reputation. And you have to respect that, and you respect other people's reputations, okay? So really, that's going to go along with being a real good musician. Of course, we love people, and you want to give the possible best. But really, cardinal rule is, you know, like if you're a player and you're a team player, try to make the other guy sound good. As a result, you sound better yourself. And the same thing goes with everything that you've been saying. If I learned that over the years, it's just and also, please, in this business, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. Right? Honest to God, I mean, absolutely. And there's another thing, it's called ego. To be a musician, and a good one, you must have an ego. But for God's sake, control it. You know what I mean? Because frankly, you start taking yourself too seriously, that's when things start to go haywire. Right? The best advice I can give you, you know? One of the nicest guys I know is David Charles' dad. Well, you talk about a reputation, it's glorious, and what fun. He's one of the funniest dudes in the world, too, isn't he? But I mean, we respect it. It's a wonderful business. But, you know, they say to me about the Childs brothers, it's fantastic, you know. Known them for years, played great, good people. So that's what you want to be. So use somebody like that, use them as an icon, and go for it, you know. Well, there's another question.
Go ahead, Jeff.
What is the hardest piece you guys have played, like in a solo recital or in a band or a brass band part or something like that?
Long notes.
The hardest piece.
The one I couldn't play.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question. It depends what environment you're in. I think there's the pieces that seem the most simple at the time can become the most difficult when you're on stage and you're on your own. There's a big audience and you've got to deliver. It's the simplest things sometimes become the most difficult. But on a technical level, I suppose the trickiest piece I've done in recent times would be Christian Lindbergh's Euphonium Concerto. That's quite tough, range-wise, technically, musically, and I did it with a chamber orchestra back home with Christian Lindbergh conducting. So when the composer's conducting as well, then there's the added pressure to try and get it right. So for me, that's probably the most difficult piece I've played recently.
For me, probably the Linkola Euphonium Concerto is quite a test. I think the Jansa as well in its entirety is quite a test as well, since it weighs in at like 25, 28 minutes and stuff like that. So.
Some of the hardest stuff I've had to play recently is actually with some of the top level brass bands. Some of the expectations now to brass band parts are just insane. They're technically quite as difficult as some of the solo work. Yeah. And it's not also just technical wise, but even recently I've been working on my sound and that sort of thing, and yesterday I performed a piece. And for me, that was quite tough to sort of be able to capture a simple melody. And if you look at the notes, it's a simple note, simple range. But to be able to make music with it and to sort of create something out of something so simple is actually quite hard and quite difficult. So that's something I've sort of been working on with it as well. So that's quite difficult in that aspect as well.
I'm also just kind of curious. Have any of you, this is for the Euphonium players, have any of you tried to play the Dvorak cello concerto on Euphonium?
I've never tried to play that one. There's a lot of cello rep that's wonderful, and I call them like impulse buy. You know, it's like I hear the Barber Sonata, and I was like, that's gorgeous. The second movement, I bought it right away. And I've heard some Euphonium players play it, and I've never performed it, but I've just bought it right away. The Elgar cello concerto, I love it. I love Jacqueline Dupre's playing of it. I listen to that all the time. So I've never tried to do an arrangement or anything, but thought about it, and some other cello works, but not the Dvorak. You could be the first one. Let me know when you're ready. Also,
I'll learn how to sing 3 notes.
Well, you figure something out. Like for cello rep, you could do some multiphonics, or you could play some 8th notes, or you could just choose one note. You know, whatever
That's
works.
so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard to sing 3 notes.
Excellent. We've got time for one last quick question. Oh yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was asked this earlier, but as far as like recording, how do you go about funding for all and prepare for all the legal backing behind the recording? Like make sure all the right, you dot your I's, cross your T's before you run into a court case later on if you miss one.
Well, you need to have permission for the pieces that you record. It's called a mechanical license.
Okay.
And so that's one of the main things. Or you have a relationship with composers where you ask them to sign off on letting you record the piece, or for a specific fee and stuff like that. You also need to have contracts with the people that are playing on the recording, whether it be the pianist or the band members and stuff like that. And I mean, as far as the financial backing, I think one of the main keys is a track record of sales of previous CDs. That's sort of how I fund mine. Sometimes for the record companies, they see good sales and stuff like that. So I think that's sort of my take on it. I mean,
No, he's absolutely right. I mean, with every commercial recording, once that CD is sold for however much money, there's a portion that will go to every composer that's on the CD, to every piece of publisher that's on the CD. That's probably why Adam records a lot of his own published music.
that is part of it, yeah.
And there's all that stuff, but you're better off, if you're going to do a CD, you're better off taking advice from someone like Adam, that's been there and done it to do that, because it is a bit of a minefield. I've never sorted that side of things out myself. But if you are going to make a CD, for any of you, the key is to try and make that first one, give it your best, because if that CD, you'll invest money. This is about funding, really. You'll invest money into the first recording. If you make a good CD that will sell, hopefully you'll recoup the money that you've spent, and maybe a bit more that you can then put into the next CD, and then you do the same. My father and uncle, the Childs Brothers, they did a CD, the first CD ever that they'd done back in the 80s. It was called Child's Play. And they did that CD, it sold well, so they did another one called Euphonium Music, and they did another one. And now they've got a recording, well, they've just sold it now actually, but they had a recording company, Dion Recordings, that's got 350 CDs in the catalogue. And it all came from the first one. The one that if that one had flopped and they hadn't done it properly, or they tried to cut corners, then maybe that wouldn't have happened.
We founded Summit Records. Hickman and us, and of course we sold it. But in a sense, you have a record company, and they usually produce what's happening here. They do all the legal fees and everything else. If you have a record company that's going on. But I have to tell you something right now. I think the CD business is at the end. I think doing a CD for me is worthless. I'm supposed to do two when I get home. What I'll probably do is stick it on YouTube. I mean, YouTube,
iTunes.
Spotify or something like that. The last recording I made just came out, right? And a week later, I went on Spotify, and you could listen to it for free. So what's the purpose of doing a CD other than you want to get your reputation out there? But personally speaking, at my end of my career, I don't really need to do that. But you want to get them out there, you want to do a good product. What I would say now, it's going to be like a DVD and things of that nature where you can see something. And that's what people will be doing. Look 6 years down, you young guys, 6 years down the road. The CD is a good thing, but it's going to be a past. It's just already known that. Record companies used to have to hire records. Where do you buy CDs now? You got to go online. You can't get them anymore. It's changing. Go with the flow. That's what I'm telling you right now. The business is going to change like mad. And there's so doggone many CDs out there. So if you're going to produce one, do something that someone wants to listen to. You know?
Actually,
Right?
going on from that, I think doing a CD, you also need to do something different or a different interpretation. Or I know Adam's done a couple of arrangements with orchestra. Offer something different because everyone's recorded the Spark, everyone's recorded Pantomime and that sort of thing. And from the funding side of things, I'm not sure what it's like in the United States, but I know in Australia you can apply for grants as new artists. And that's basically how I got over here. I applied for a funding grant to travel over here, and I got completely all flights, accommodation, everything paid for. And there's actually a lot of money out there for new artists and that sort of thing. And a lot of people don't know about it, so that I'm not sure if it's the similar sort of situation over here or not.
I think it's not as specific as what you've got, but we've had people that have gotten grants to come here from Thailand.
But Einstein does very well.
Yeah.
But his country supports that. And which is fantastic. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a career. But yes, there are a lot of grants out there. Someone just has to learn how to write them. You know, and you're in competition with singers, violinists, pianists, and everything else. But it can be done. We do it all the time. So.
I just wanted to go off, and it's going to sound like a sales pitch, but it's more just so that you understand, just like what David was talking about with Doyen Recordings, that whole company was an outgrowth of one successful recording. And with what's happening with iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube now, is we all know that CD sales are going down. There's just a huge reduction in CDs that people are purchasing and stuff like that. But for you, depending on how you feel about different things, knowing that when you purchase a CD of, classical artists, different things like that, that every little sale has a trickle-down effect, whether it means that it ends up going to the composers as royalties, whether it goes to the publishing company. I know that, like David pointed out, that is one of the reasons why I do record a lot of the publications, because I don't have to pay a mechanical license fee for that to the publisher. I pay a mechanical license to the composer and stuff like that, but it also makes the paperwork a lot easier. Just so that you understand what flows down to, say, an artist. Like I have a couple of my CDs that go through, distributed through CD Baby. And they also filter down to iTunes and then also down to Spotify. So if you listen to one of my CDs on Spotify, you listen to a track on Spotify of mine, I will likely get somewhere between 3/10 to half of a penny for each track that you listen to. So I want everybody to set up their computers to stream my CDs constantly so that those 3/10 of a penny add up. So if you buy a track on iTunes, it's 99 cents. Likely I would see somewhere about 60 to 65 cents of that. If you buy the whole CD, then of course that's like $6. But the thing on Spotify, when you start thinking about whether you're utilizing and consuming free media, or whether you're paying for it, is that there's the long-term effect of it going into future projects. I mean, Brian Bowman told me, I remember when I did listen to this, and gave him a copy, and he said, "Oh, this is really good, and this is going to be interesting." I said, "Yeah," in a naive way. I said, "Yeah, when I sell a bunch of these, I'm going to take a vacation and stuff like that." And he was sort of like, "Well, what you're probably going to end up doing, Adam, is you'll never really make money on CDs. He said they'll just fund the next project. And as you talk with a lot of artists, that is a lot of times what ends up happening. They also fund new commissions and things like that. So just be aware that, while things are easy to get on YouTube and stuff like that, there's also a trickle-down effect financially that happens for the composers a lot of times, and also for funding future projects. All my projects are self-funded, including like the CDs that we did in New Zealand. If you notice, for a lot of artists, and I think you guys will say this as well, Mr. Parentoni, is that you'll notice that there's been a significant slowdown in production of new recording projects by a lot of artists that, if you look back in the releases, you'll see, man, releasing a lot of CDs, and then now there's a big slowdown, and there's a reason for that, because people aren't buying as many. So just some economics for you to understand.
Having said that, following on from what Mr. P said, DVDs, I've just made one, if anyone's interested.
Yeah.
You can find it.
Yeah, DaveChilds.com?
Yeah, new website. Well, it's the same address, but it's been souped up. But yeah, it's a DVD, because I noticed that there was getting a fair few hits on YouTube, and I thought, well, people are obviously into watching the performance as well as just listening to it. And so I've recorded a mini recital of 10 pieces with piano, which is on a DVD. I've done a masterclass, which is a camera and me talking about the various things that I do in my practice, and suggesting some things that other people might want to try. Go through a variety of compartmentalizing your playing, from breathing to warm-ups to technique, high notes, low notes, all that kind of stuff. And then there's some extras on the end, which might be of interest to some of you, because it's my performances as a solo euphonium player with the British-style brass band, because that's really been the biggest part of my music making all my life up until recently. So it's performances, great band performances. You'll hear phenomenal cornet playing, and tuba playing, and trombone playing, and it's good fun just to have a little look.
They're doing apps too now. They're already involved in that for the teaching things. Got many projects happening right now. That's the new thing. Get an app. If someone says, how do you play low? Or here's something by such and such. You get an app. And those apps are going. I'm just trying to get you guys to think of what's happening in the future. We're always scheming and things. This is what's happening. You want to be a soloist and you want to do it good. You have the good ability to be able to promote. But remember, make it a good product. So you have the apps. You get all that. There's so many things that you can get on there. And if you start hitting on something, it's quite good. There are people right now on teaching or contacting a lot of the professionals, and we are already documented. You'll see so many things coming out in the near future. That's what's happening, okay? We always want to try to be a little first at it. It's kind of nice. Louis Armstrong, he was first.
Yeah, George, it's got to be quick.
Allow me to say something?
Huh?
I would think, these guys all in here, they an expert in marketing, I would think that if you want to sell, you got a euphonium, you're trying to sell your services. If you want to sell something, you better be sitting in Walmart's parking lot, and you watch those Walmart shoppers come out of there, and you look at those people, and you figure out, how in the hell do I sell them something? Because that's where the market is. That's what Mr. Parentoni is telling you. That's where the market is. You need to do missionary work. Get your euphonium out and go stand up on a corner and play. Get somebody to hear you play your euphonium, so you can get it, so you can expand the market. These guys they're superstars. They're at the top of the market. They're skimming the cream off the top. I mean, you guys aren't going to be able to do that. Maybe a half of you wouldn't get on it. But maybe not.
I tell you a real interesting marketing stunt that I saw very recently. I was in Germany, where the B&S factory is, and there's a tuba player, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember his name. It's a young French guy.
Yeah. The one in
Sorry?
Right.
Okay, so and in this factory he had his postcards as you walk in, and there's nothing wrong with having postcards, a lot of artists have them, but instead of it being a picture of him with his tuba, there was a sofa, and he was sat on the floor in front of the sofa with his tuba, and he had this beautiful blonde woman doing the splits behind him. I don't normally look at postcards of tuba players, but I think
She's a professional model.
Right.
Okay, I mean, one of the most handsome couples you've ever seen. Yeah, you take a look at that. You're going to probably see the tubas the last time.
I do think though that's the next level.